Hey guys. Okay, so we are going to finish the amendments over this break. This week we're doing presidential and congressional amendments. Next week is voting rights, and the next week is like prohibition and all the other ones. So we need to focus on the president now. I know some of these we've already done, but they're so important that I want to go back through and make sure we know them for sure. Um, for this week, you are going to have um, half of these notes today. I'm going to send you the other half on Wednesday. And then Friday, you're going to have like a 3-question quiz to take just over what you've learned this week. And also by Friday, I want you to send me a couple sentences on one of the amendments we talked about and why you think it's the most important. What would life be like if we didn't have it? Okay, just to make sure you're understanding and you're actually watching these videos. Okay, so let's get started with these. The first one, I know we've talked about this in the beginning, election of 1800, this whole thing, but 12th Amendment. So this is the procedure for electing president and vice president. So before, electors had to vote for president, and then the second place got to be vice president. So we're going back to the Electoral College. We've talked so much about the Electoral College. The electors from each state, they all get together. They each had one vote. Whoever got first, cool, president. Second place, cool, vice president. This causes problems because most of the time the people were very different politically and ideologically. Causes major, major problems. So that's when this came into place. Now all of the electors have 2 votes, one for president, one for vice president. It always works out that the electors choose the president and the vice president based on their running mates, like they decide. Because again, just to go around the problem of having 2 people in office that are super, super different. Like, could you imagine Hillary and Pence working together? Or, anybody like that? Would not work. Why is this important? Well, obviously, it makes things run a little smoother, makes things easier. But what if there's a tie? The House of Representatives will break the tie. Okay, so next we have the 17th Amendment. This is the direct election of senators. So before, at the state level, we have a Senate and a House at each state's level. The House at the state level would choose the senators from the state to go to the federal Congress. So the people had no direct influence on the senators. It was more seen as, we elected the House at the state level, so they can just pick the senators to go to the federal level for us. No big deal. Now people in each state directly elect their senators. I didn't think this was very much of a controversial amendment, but the more I researched it, it kind of can be. I just want to read a little bit from this article that I found. So apparently there are some people that want to repeal the 17th Amendment. Okay. They argued that giving state governments a more formal and direct representation in Congress would resuscitate constitutional federalism, which has been adversely affected by the Progressive Era Amendment, meaning the 17th Amendment. Senators would rein in federal government overreach and staunch its growth. So the main argument is that it would give the states more of an influence in federal government. Because if state government is picking specific people from the state government to send, it's said that maybe the government has a better idea of who would be good or bad in Congress. I don't know. Okay, as with national politicians and the general public, what state legislators think is in their state's best interest is bound tightly with their partisan allegiance and political ideology. As a result, when the federal government advances a policy they like, even when it violates state sovereignty, some state politicians will be supportive. So, um, it's saying that state legislators focus on what is in their best interest for the state, but that can also be super tied to what their party wants and what they believe politically, which again can cause some major problems. Okay, scroll, scroll, scroll. So they're saying that repealing it is rooted in what the founders had originally wanted our government to look like. They're saying that states have become more reliant on federal funds and more enmeshed in the national level ideological fights. So states are dependent on the money they get from the federal government. So they're going to want to send people to the federal government. They're going to get us the most money. That it may well turn the fight for federalism, an already uphill battle for hearts and minds, into a veritable mission impossible. So we know what federalism is, right? It's the relationship between your state government and your federal government, and how your local government plays into your state, which plays into your federal, that kind of thing. It's that relationship between the branches, um, maybe not branches, but like types of government. Um, and so getting rid of this direct election of senators, people having an influence on the federal government, can affect the way that the country views federalism. So I don't know. What do you think? Good, bad? It can go either way. Okay, next we have the lame duck amendment, the 20th Amendment. Oh, I forgot to put the before in. Um, Before presidents were inaugurated in March 4th. Keep in mind they're elected in November, so from November to March is a huge gap of inactivity. You got no push to really do anything. Now the president's term ends on January 20th. Congressional term ends on January 3rd. So Congress and the president, a little different. But let's start with the president. So before they were inaugurated in March, um, those couple months, like I've said before, you have really no drive to do anything. You're coming out of the office. Presidents really don't do anything. The presidency is kind of a job you retire from, and you just retire because it's that stressful and important of a job. Um, so this ensures a quicker turnaround. You get somebody new in, send you out, you go on your retirement. Happy days. Congressional terms and January 3rd. So congressional terms are a little different. Um, they have like when they're specifically in session, when they're not in session. It's a whole thing. We'll talk about it later. But for what you need to know right now is that their term ends on January 3rd. If the president dies in between their election in November and inauguration day in January, this amendment states that VP takes over. That's a really good thing to have because, I mean, we haven't had a president die in that awkward period yet, but, always good to have something in place in case something happens.
The 20th Amendment forcibly solving what was perceived as a problem of lame duck lawmaking. The criticism of lame duck lawmaking is you've got members who might have run for office and have been defeated, yet they're still there voting when the session's over. And honey, you have hit the duck. You've lamed. It is collapsed down, but it's still walking. So here, members, those legislators who had already lost, but their term hadn't ended, basically they were free to do whatever they want and not be responsible to any constituents. The way our government was originally set up is that when you had an election. That Congress did not take office for 13 months. And instead, the prior Congress had an entire session. As soon as our government system turned from what the founders originally dreamed of, a nonpartisan system of representative government, to a partisan within the first 12 years of our government, people recognized the problem of the old way of working. The old Congress was served for a whole other thing. So immediately there began to be proposals introduced virtually every Congress. The House continually refused to get enough votes to get this out. If they have a lame duck session, they lost election. They can do what they want during that year, which includes giving votes in return for a future job. It empowered them. And that's why it took from 1932, when we had a depression, when we had a very unusual turnover, and you ended up with people unexpectedly taking the House of Representatives already committed on this issue in the 20th Amendment. What happens is sessions begin in January and run for a year. And that means the second session of Congress can run after the election, but it can be at most 6 weeks, 7 weeks to finish up a term. Drafters of the 20th Amendment, they wanted this short period because they looked back to things like the 13th Amendment that ended slavery only got passed because it was a lame duck session. Lincoln had to compromise with people who otherwise wouldn't have signed it to get them to pass it during the lame duck session. They were able to get through, and partisanship was lifted briefly. They wanted a small window, not for starting things, but finishing up something that was already very much on the public vision.
Okay, so wild about the 13th Amendment. I didn't know that. Um, I keep wanting to ask you questions, but you can't answer them. So, 13th Amendment. So, I think part of the reason why that Lincoln really took advantage of that awkward election time, some people coming in, some people coming out. Um, what do you think would happen if all of these Southern Democrats that are supposed to be so diehard for slavery kind of changed their mind as the Civil War went on and kind of came to an end? And they decided that, hey, you know what? Maybe slavery isn't a good thing. Um, do you think that they could openly vote that in Congress? I mean, probably not. They'd have to face a lot of um, retribution from the other congressmen around them. So I think it worked out better this way that, they were all on their way out. So, there's no harm in voting the way you want to because you aren't going to get that pushback from the people around you. Um, Sometimes when those partisan meaning like party lines, can be brought down, changes can happen. A lot of times people, not even just congressmen, but people, people fall into this. I'm a Democrat, I need to believe this. I'm a Republican, I need to believe that. And that's kind of a dangerous way to think because if you're just blindly voting with your party, you're not really thinking out the pros and cons for yourself and making that informed decision that is meant for voters to make. So, why is this important? It could speed things up or slow things down. What if the opposite happens? So, I talked about, we have a president, he's leaving, he's got, 4-ish months between election and his inauguration, before he's or the new inauguration before he's leaving. So he could either do nothing and just sit back and let the country go on its own, or um, what if the president starts just passing or like signing all of these laws, whatever he can do, throwing executive orders out. Same with Congress. What if Congress just starts like pumping out laws left and right because they know they're on their way out? That could be dangerous too, right? So, shortening this time period lessens that possibility of a scramble, you know. But I mean, again, that scramble could be good or bad. It just depends who was in the government at that time. I think I'm gonna stop here. Nope, we're gonna go one more. Yeah, let's go one more. Okay, so last one for today is 22nd Amendment, 2 terms. President serves 2 terms, right? Before, no term limits on the president. Now, president can only serve 2 terms. FDR has been the only president to serve more than 2 terms. Presidents serve 2 terms at a time because of the precedent that was set by George Washington. Precedent, remember, means like guidelines or like an example to follow. Technically, presidents can serve up to 10 years. It depends on your circumstances. So let's say that I become president and I make, who wants to be my vice president? Adriana. Adriana's my vice president. Okay, so I'm president. Adriana's my vice president. I am, in office for a year and a half and I die. Okay. Adriana becomes vice president for the last 2 of my years plus a half. So she's at 2.5. She runs again. 100%. Everybody loves her. Gets elected again. That is 6.5 years. So technically, she's only served 1 full term and then like a half of a term. So she should be able to serve a second term, right? Her 2 terms. Well, she can't because if she serves another term, she'll go over that 10-year period. Does that make sense? So if I were to serve for 3 years and I die and Adriana takes over, she's got that 1. She could serve her 4-year term, her first one, and then get reelected, serve a second 4-year term, because then in total, she'd only be serving 9 years. So just another way, gives vice presidents a little flexibility when they have to take on this role of president, but it also, still limits that power. If you look at this political cartoon, this is FDR. So his um, first election, my friends. Second one, my friends. Third one, my subjects. Fourth one, my slaves. So this is demonstrating the importance of term limits, thinking that if we don't have term limits, it can kind of lean towards that. We have a king, the monarchy kind of mindset. Obviously, we know FDR didn't turn out like this, but there's always that danger. Okay, so we're gonna stop. Um, I'm gonna send you this out today, and then Wednesday you're gonna get another email from me, and then Friday you'll get a another one with your quiz. So have a great week.